I'm Brian. This is Reggie. And this is R&B Talks.
It is?
Well, yeah.
We're going to talk?
Well, of course. We do that very well, right?
Like, can I smoke one pipe too?
You can. Okay. You're allowed. It's your house, dude. I can't. Like, I'm going to say no. Especially since you made me this delicious coffee. This stuff is...
I'm a coffee nerd, man. I tell you that. Because that's, I mean, that's a specific El Salvador light roast I like. And I've got my precision grinder that I know all the settings and all the stuff. And, you know, I do a distribution and a tamp. So, yeah, I'm really a nut job.
Whatever you're doing over there, that's like Gondor, like Elrond the wizard magic things happening over there.
I know.
You're just turning and spitting out water.
Man,
like, there's all kinds of things.
I've always loved coffee, dude. I mean, like, it's been a thing. So coffee to me is like, I mean, it's just like another hobby, to be honest. And it wasn't until way in my career, you know, because I'm in my 40s now, but it wasn't until not 5 years ago when I could really do coffee like I wanted to, because it costs a lot of money to get like machines and grinders and
everything
good coffee.
Costs.
And I mean, it's expensive.
Dude, I remember when, you know, I like to play video games, and I remember when video games were affordable. Like, you could get like the newest system and you weren't going to put out $800 just to get started. And now, dude, you got to have $1,000 to even get out the door with video games. And that's tough, especially if you're like a 16-year-old kid.
You know, I mean, I am a gamer still, but I moved over to PC like years ago.
Yeah.
So when I first built the gaming PC, well, I don't remember what year. I don't remember when that was, but I think it was a couple grand that I put into just that computer. And then, of course, you have upgrades you make over time. So I think overall, I mean, you're talking probably $5-6 grand in computer stuff over the years, and then just hardware, and then the games themselves. Like, and even now, it's even more expensive with games, because some of them you buy off the front, some of them are free up the front, but overall they're going to cost the same, because the ones that say they're free will have like season passes, or they'll have like whatever bundles and all that stuff, or
because you can't advance unless you buy the bundle.
Something stupid like Destiny 2 is one of my games I've played since it started. It's been 9 years, right? I know. I mean, I think I saw a video by one of the guys. It's like $800 for just the game you've paid for just the game, not counting if you bought any like cosmetic bundles or whatever, right? So it's like, it's a lot of money. Call of Duty. I play Call of Duty 2, or Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, particularly the DMZ stuff. Like it's an extraction looter shooter. You buy the freaking cosmetic stuff and the bundle. But I mean, it's a lot of money. I don't see how anybody that's younger can do all that stuff, man. It just fathoms me, because it's a shit ton of money, dude.
Well, dude, I'm a Red Dead guy.
I love Red Dead, bro.
Okay, so I grind. I've ground out Red Dead 2 to get my stuff. Like, I got all the top end stuff, but I had to grind to get it. And there are kids on there that have like 4 hours of gameplay, and they have blown an epic amount of money, while I'm out here scrounging for quarters of gold bars and completing missions to buy my stuff and upgrade. And, you know, because I mean, dude, I'm raising kids. I don't have a fortune to spend on just blow it on video games, man. That's an expensive thing. You know, even like phone games, like it's even on there now. It's pay to play. I mean, even though the game is free to download and free to play, if you want to do anything, you're going to pay.
Dude, what was the one game I did get sucked into was Golf Clash, I think.
Golf Clash.
Yeah, it was this golf game, and you could, I don't know, I probably threw down some money on that one to get coins and stuff and upgrades and stuff like that, because it was a lot. And then I finally just quit. And I was like, when they took away, because you have an overlay that you could do on your iPad. Like, you could bring it over and you had like a way you could tell the wind was going to be this and this, and you could put the overlay over and you could go, okay, I got to aim here, because it was really complicated, like how if you got this kind of elevation or whatever, you make that change plus the wind does this and this, and you'd have to, because I mean, it's not like real life where it's a game. So all this stuff is programmed in a certain way. And if you don't know what that certain way is, you can't aim your shot, right?
Yeah.
So these overlays would do that. They would like be like, and you know, I never used they had some that would aim for you, and I never did that. I just wanted to get the like calculation of like how much to adjust for. Anyway, they took all that away, and I'm like, I don't want to feel trying to figure this out in my head. I don't have time for that.
Yeah,
so.
Dude, you know, I got hooked on merge games. Like, it is amazing how much merging 3 items together becomes addictive. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's funny.
But anyway, so let's talk about why we want to do this, man. Let's talk about what our purpose is. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Reg, and then a little bit about what you want to happen from this podcast.
Well, really, this is a fruit of like, I've been working on this for a while because I had Pipe and Redbeard was my YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
I did for a long time but it was really just would record a video, really didn't edit it, threw it up there and done.
Yeah.
It was only just to share my hobby of like pipe smoking and cigars and stuff, and just talk a little bit about all that but it was not on a schedule. It was really just whenever. And then I went back to school and then that took all the time away I could do anything with it. Cause I had reached a point where it's like, look, if I'm going to do anything with this, I really need to like put some better production into it, edit some videos and all that stuff. So when I started doing that, it was too much time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have time for this. I don't. Leading a global team of engineers and then trying during the day and then trying to be a dad and a husband and all this stuff wasn't going to happen. And I just I didn't like necessarily in the channel, but I just stopped doing videos. But the idea is that it was still there, that, you know, there's so much that I want to discuss on a public forum, and not so much that I want to like, I have a goal of being like a personality or necessarily or whatever, but it's just, if I can share anything or help somebody with something in whatever little bit, I think that I just can't not do that. And so this is really an attempt to take what knowledge I've occurred, what life experiences I have, my maturity in my walk with Jesus, and how that has changed me and made me better. My experience as a husband and a father and all that stuff, to kind of be a different voice than what the major media has for men and the populace in general, and even Christian men, because I think I'm not quite the way some of the churches have that be, but I'm quite a bit different than the quote unquote progressive churches too. So that's my idea behind this, is just to be real, have a compelling conversation about a subject that is rooted in truth, not somebody's perception, but actual reality of the world. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Wow. That was a solid answer, Reggie, I have to say.
I know, Brian, and I am so anxious to hear yours.
For me, this is about kind of a threefold thing. Number one, we need to restore the ability for people who believe different things to be able to have conversation about those things without assuming that one side or the other is wrong, hateful, destructive. Because if we can't have open discourse, we're never going to get anywhere. The second thing is I think that the image of Christian men of faith, has been damaged so badly. And we're seen as, I've heard everything from bigots to toxically masculine to the ignorant to hateful, and we're none of that. Not if you're truly following God. You are none of those things. If you're truly following your path, you're none of those things.
Well, let's be clear. for a second. If someone chooses to use the term cisgender anywhere on this channel, it's not that I'll be offended, but I'm going to laugh at you hard.
Yeah, because I'm not cis anything.
No, I'm a man.
I'm just a man. You know, I mean, yeah, that's.
I'm a man. I'm not a cis man or cis male or that bull. No.
Well, but I think, and part of open discourse is using our language in its proper form, right? Like we need to, when we begin putting labels on people, when we start calling people cis or, you know, whatever pronoun you want to use at that point, I think what you're doing is you are labeling yourself and the other person. Let's just start off by understanding that we're people and we're trying to have a conversation. And that's a great starting point, right? Like, you know, one of the biggest things I think is a mistake in the current version of our church is we're so quick to want to deliver the message of Christ, right? You're all naughty, Romans 3:10-12, like it. But
that's the truth.
Yeah. We're so quick to want to deliver the message of Christ, and that's not bad, right? I don't consider that bad at all. I have no problem talking to someone about what I believe and why I believe it. We forget to get to know people. And part of helping someone or giving someone insight into what we are, if that's all we wind up doing in the conversation, is helping them understand who we are and us getting to understand more who they are. Which leads me to the third part of this. I have no problem telling people I grew up rough. Hard childhood, hard early adulthood. But in that, I was very blessed to have a lot of people come into my life, you being one of them, that I was able to find my way away from all that and discover who I am and my strengths. And I'm still figuring out who I am. I'm 40. I'm in my 40s, man. And I'm still working all that out. And if my story or my experiences in any way can help another person grow and become more of what they're meant to be, then I'm more than willing to put it out in the public discourse and let it go. Because at the end of all this, I'm not here to upset anyone, make anybody angry, make anybody hate me, or make anybody love me for that matter. I'm just here because I feel like that we have a bigger responsibility as Christian men to not only be heard and be truthful and be realistic and all of the things that come along with that, but more than any of that, we have a responsibility to rebuild the image of what a Christian man is. This damaged view of what we are, we need to rebuild that and make people understand that our job is to love and to help in any way we can. And we have to, somebody has to step forward and be willing to talk about that and try to bridge that gap. So,
well, and to help those, because this is obviously our first venture into this whole R&B Talks channel, but I mean, to help everybody here, I mean, so we're planning on episodes dealing directly with men. Like, what does it mean to be a man? What does that look like? What is that supposed to be? How is our experiences? Blah, blah, blah. We're looking at, that's a whole entire episode dedicated to that. One being a husband, one being a father or dad, what's that look like? I mean, all these things are so simple on the surface, but in today's culture, they're getting just either both watered down or lessened or just flat out being rejected. I mean, that's the thing that I think we both agree on about men today, is that our current culture is seeking to bring us down, to make us less powerful, less of people, and for the sake of whatever social injustice you want to say. Without getting into it, the only real world example I have right now, though, is that what happens when the shit hits the fan. What happens, right? And we have Ukraine to thank for this example. The women and children are allowed to go.
Yes.
Anybody who's an adult, able-bodied man isn't. They have to stay and fight.
In a war that they don't want to be in.
Yeah. So you have women and children, they're all allowed to go. And it's not like they're turning around and coming back and going, oh, look, they're leaving. And they did. The men are the ones who stay back and fight. They're the ones who are dying for their Ukraine in this freaking conflict or whatever. So there's just, when it all comes down to it, when things get really bad, there is no such thing as like equality and all this crap. It goes back to men being men and women being support, period. And that's the way it's always going to be when society breaks down, period. There are biological differences that make that. Then it's like I said, there's a whole bunch. We'll talk about that later, but yeah, that's my view about all that stuff. So that's why I say cis crap. I don't really care. Like if I'm a man. I'm a real man, and I was raised that way. And I lead my family. I lead my community as a man, and I'm supposed to. And I don't care what you say. You can't take that away from me.
Well, and I think part of that too, for me is, as a man, I was, my role as a man is to be a leader in my home, is to be a protector for my family, be a provider for my family. And I feel like those things, especially as of late, they just seem to be taking this nonsensical, brutal beating.
Yeah.
Right. Like, why would I ever feel bad about loving my family so much that I'm willing to work as hard as I have to whatever lengths I have to take care of them and to provide something for them and to be a good husband and to be a good father. And again, I'm still figuring a lot of those things out. I think it's a lifelong thing. I think any man who gives up the student's mentality when it comes to being a better man and thinks that he's got it all on lock.
Oh yeah.
That's a fail.
You're always learning and engaging until you die. What
I believe is that, those things are being brutally beaten. I constantly hear, about, the patriarchy. Okay. I don't know what patriarchy I'm a part of, because I'm simply getting up every morning, and doing all I can throughout the day, committing myself to anything I can to be a good father, husband, and provider. And I feel like I constantly have to constantly have to defend that just seems silly.
It is silly. It's a waste of time.
It's so silly for someone to look at someone and go, it's single mothers. Nobody's pointing out single mothers and going, well, you're working 3 jobs. And yeah, because she loves her kids so much that she wants to provide for them, that she wants to give them opportunities. The same as me as a husband, I want to give my kids opportunities. My wife works as well, and we work together as a unit. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the success or failures of my family, but we still work as a unit.
Right.
Now, whether that's a single income household or whether that's where someone stays at home and someone's working, or whether that's both of you working, you're still a unit. But at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the fails and successes of my home biblically. And I have to take responsibility for that. And I take that very seriously. And I really struggle when I'm pigeonholed into being a hateful, bigoted. I'm
even farther than that than you are, dude. I mean, because my wife's a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And I work.
Which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No.
I think that's
what my wife wants to do. It's not like she forced into it or anything. I mean, she wanted to do that. She wanted to raise our kids, not someone else. She wanted to be us.
Yeah.
That did it. And, she has the tougher job than I do. I mean, to be fair, it's like, man, there's so many things she has to do to keep the house, do this and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I work a lot, but I don't know.
Well, see, here's the thing though. It's the dynamic you chose together.
Well, yeah.
So because you made that choice, you should be allowed to have that choice.
Sure.
Right? It shouldn't be a point of mockery or ridicule that you choose to do, and one of the things that here's a lot, and then we'll get off on our subject. I know we've kind of gone on a rabbit trail here, but people make choices every day, right? And one of the things that really bothers me is when I hear, well, you're living that, 1950s role. No, you're living as a man and wife who made a choice for your dynamic in our current time, and you're making it work, and you're doing a good job.
Look, man,
so this whole thing of, well, that's old hat, new hat. No, it's simply a choice made between a man and a wife for the dynamic of their family, what they think is in the best interest of their family. It's not a choice pointed at changing anyone else's lifestyle. If that was why you made the choice, you shouldn't have made the choice in the first place. You're a Christian family, you're a biblical family who chooses to take your family in that direction. And from everything I see, knowing you both, you do a fantastic job at it. Especially in our modern age.
It's like this, man. I mean, regardless of the socio nonsense, whatever you want to call it, that you would have against that kind of thing with a traditional like wife who stays at home and all that stuff. The key here is that she's not as educated or doesn't have a career skill that I do. So the odds of her going out and getting a job that would pay enough to pay for childcare and something else is pretty kind of, I mean, look, we crushed the numbers before. It was like maybe we'd get him maybe $100 extra a month by her working full time, because we'd have to send both our kids to some kind of childcare, daycare, whatever it is.
Which is repulsively expensive.
Yeah. I mean, and then, we're going to homeschool our girls next year. So, we're not, she's going to do that. So I'm not, that's because she can. She's staying home. She's with our girls. She's doing that. Right. Yeah. So no, I don't have I get, if you want to have it used to be a problem with people would get on, say some snide remarks about her and her way she does, she's chosen, and that was, I'm some kind of overbearing, like roar. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am. And I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm scary because I'm supposed to be that way. But, my wife she'll tell you that this is her way. Yeah. It's not just I made this choice. Yeah. She wanted this before she did. I did. We just came together, and that was just a common thing.
Wasn't it Jordan Peterson said that there's no virtue in a weak man? There's virtue in a man. There's virtue in a man who is a monster and can control that.
Yeah.
That's virtue.
Well, there's strength in controlling the monster in you.
Yeah.
There's no strength if you're not a monster.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. So there's no effort there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you must be a dangerous, there has to be some kind of danger in you. And really what he talks about in that, and psychologically, is that, in any conversation or argument or whatever, there's an undertone of violence that's there. So if it goes too far, there is. Yeah. I mean, so that's part of it. But we'll talk about that when we're talking about being a man.
Well, now that we've rambled on about ourselves, let's get to our subject.
Well, we're talking about manhood, right? Yeah. And that's part of what compromises our worldview. So when we talk about worldview, that's what we're going to address today. Is like we're men, we're biblically sound men. Mm-hmm. We believe the Bible is the way, the truth, and it's inerrant and it's complete. So all those things are part of our worldview that we see the world.
Yes.
So, and it goes even farther than that, though, because even between us, me and you, Brian, we're going to have a slightly different worldview because of the way and where we were raised and how we were raised and the experiences that we've had. Those all encompass into our perception of the world too.
Even our educational backgrounds. You're a far deeper educational background than I am. Like you're getting a master's. You've been in school. You're going.
Well, I don't know if I'm getting a master's. I'm still doing bachelor stuff right now.
Yeah, but I don't see you not going. Dude, come on. All right, Reggie. I know a lot about you. But one thing I do know about you is you're going to complete the map, right? You don't play Zelda and quit halfway through. Right? Like you're going to get all the way to the end of the game. That's the way it works. Right. So, but I mean, I think, educational worldview. I mean, I don't have, let's be honest. I didn't finish high school. I got a GED. There were circumstances in my life that called for me, mostly out of my control, that I had to do what I had to do. But I since then have, amongst my many certifications for my many jobs, I have gym certifications and gold certifications and jewelry certifications. And I also have, training and nutrition certifications. And because I love to educate myself. And I think part of that came from getting starved of it at one point, right? Like I wasn't given really a choice. And in that situation, I now at this stage in my life, I just soak up anything I can. I'm rekindling my love of reading. I'm rekindling my love of, education. I spend a ton of time on AMA websites, American Medical Association, just because I want to learn, to be better at what I do and who I am. And, I'm constantly reading, biblically and reading about, lately I've got this, thing about reading about the history of the church, history of the American church, and how, Christianity kind of developed through the years and how the denominations developed. And all that's really interesting to me now because I want to know, I want to understand, I want to be a complete. But also, side note, if you see this video and you're mad at me, keep it to yourself. I'm not going to have a yelling, screaming argument with you. If you want to sit down and have some civil discourse with me.
Put it in the comments.
Thanks, man.
Go ahead.
If you want to sit down and have a conversation with me, I'm more than willing to talk and meet you where you're at and have a conversation. But if this is going to be one of those things where you're attempting to bring derisiveness or drama to me, just know that I won't respond not because I'm afraid of it or I don't want to, I've had my points of where I've had to, engage in those things, but I'm at a stage in my life where my interest is in helping people and talking with people and restoring civil discourse. And I have no desire to be conflictual purposefully. So, but anyway, worldview. So give me your definition of worldview, Reg. Tell me kind of where you see your overarching definition of worldview for the average person.
Worldview really isn't complicated. It's really just how you perceive reality as it is.
Yeah.
So there are certain aspects of that, like if you have a religious affiliation, your experience, all that stuff, how you perceive and answer questions about what's going on, that's your worldview.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a good example. The Sound of Freedom movie came out, right? Mm-hmm. We went to see it. It's fantastic. You should go. It's freaking brilliant. And while you would think that child sex trafficking is something that everybody could agree on is bad,
mm-hmm.
there was an article written in The Guardian that was kind of like saying it was a QAnon piece and
conspiracy,
all this stuff.
No.
So that's the level of idiocy we live in today, where we can't even agree on child sex trafficking as being wrong, or that why wouldn't that be heralded as a good piece of filmmaking to bring that situation to light? And that right there is a true example of a far difference of worldview from what we see it, what I see it, and then what some others would see that. There's a reason why some people could see that worldview or with their worldview go, well, we need to change pedophiles to minor attracted persons. Well, you're trying to lessen it so that you can enable that kind of activity. And that's part of your worldview. And you see that as okay. I in no way see that as okay, and would violently react to somebody trying to do that to my family. Right.
Yeah.
So there, like, the key though, here's a really big thing, is that it doesn't matter even if you grew up next to someone who looks like you, who is the same religion, same thing. I'm sure your perception of reality is going to be about the same, but there's still going to be some differences. So the key thing about how we see everything around us is that no matter who you are, there's going to be something in common, but there's also, no matter who you are, there's going to be some differences.
Yeah.
And dealing with those is vital for a healthy civilization to flourish, right? And that's part of what you were saying before, is that the way we just avoid discourse, or that it's like this evil thing anymore to have an argument, and it's really a shame, because that's the way you can grow or like shape your opinions and stuff, by hearing different viewpoints.
Yeah.
But we believe, as part of our worldview, that there are absolutes, though. Like there's the reality that a Christian man sees the world is from the lens of how God has created the universe. So his truth is the truth, the reality, period. When we look at things like, either whether it be like what marriage is, or how a man and a woman is supposed to be, or how you're supposed to handle your finances, or how you're supposed to do any number of things that the Bible's very clear about, those are absolutes for us. Whereas in some other of our secular people will say those are really relative, that, you know, someone's personal happiness is this or that, or that their self is more important than this and that, right? And that's a huge difference between like a Christian perspective and a secular perspective, is that we do have absolutes. That's how we see things. And all that other stuff, like morality, is different and can be relative in a situation of the secular mind.
Well, I mean, situationally, when we're looking at it, you know, I feel like that's something that in worldview that's been kind of whitewashed, is morality. You were talking about that, you know, with the child sex trafficking thing. I'll make it even easier. We've whitewashed facts with feelings, right? And feelings, don't get me wrong, feelings are a real thing. We have feelings, right? Sometimes we hurt for people, sometimes but regardless of our feelings, there is a truth and a false. There's a true and a false. And we've begun to try to whitewash that into, well, there is no truth and there is no reality. It is what we decide is reality. And, you know, unfortunately, it's not something that I'm willing to bend on, right? Like and don't get me wrong. Feelings can be powerful, right? You see somebody hurting, you see somebody who's experienced a great tragedy, that can bring about powerful feelings, right?
Sure.
But those feelings, regardless of how strong they are, don't change the reality. And I'll give you an example. It's kind of random, but it's a good example. The current climate warriors. I understand that you feel like the world is in trouble, and if we don't make some changes, things are going to get bad. I personally, I've done a little research. Honestly, I haven't done a lot. But to destroy works of art to impede first responders from being able to do their job, to throw, animal blood on someone, to do the utter, and let's be clear, to do the utterly ridiculous acts that they do. That doesn't change what the truth is. They're completely unnecessary and ridiculous. You can tell me, they love to use the example of suffrage. Well, yeah, but they didn't whack people over the head with stuff and throw stuff on people and destroy property and interrupt. They didn't do that stuff. They literally, if you go back and look at that, they did disruption, but they did, chants and, protests, but they didn't try to impede people's lives by doing it, because they understood, you and I would understand clearly that if I'm a Christian, and we've seen many of them as a Christian man, when a Christian male goes out and yells in people's faces and calls them sinners and tells them that they're going to rot in hell and all the things that happen in that environment, you're not doing anyone any good. You're making people dislike you. And, that to me is a truth. As a Christian man, I'll tell you, I would never involve myself in that type of behavior. Now, would I go into public and have a direct conversation with someone about what I believe and be willing to have an open debate that was civil? Sure. But I'm not going to go out with a bullhorn and a sign strapped to my back that says, you're going to go to hell. That's not going to do any good. No more than it's going to do any good to shout someone down, or to, what people don't realize is by doing those things, you aren't really helping your cause, and you're changing our worldview on you. And that's something that I've realized over the last few weeks or so. Worldview changes in current time, right? We've seen that over the last 4 to 5 years, from COVID to, all the things that have gone on. There's real time worldview changes going on.
Well, okay, on that subject, just to break for a second, we saw medical research being weaponized during the COVID stuff. Mm-hmm. Instead of the research being like well done and everything else, they would hide anything that was different. And this is all now public. It's not like I'm saying anything that's not, but you anybody who's yelling about masks or we were asking about vaccinations or whatever. I mean, all of the science was then just shrugged under the table, or it was just, it was manipulated to show what they are. And then a couple years later, what's it come out that, oh yeah, this is true. This is true. This is true. So we live in a world now where media outlets are not led by journalistic integrity anymore. They're pushing a worldview that has an agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know there's a lot of people, and especially some of the older folks, who only watch a certain news network or something. And I don't watch any of them, to be honest. I don't watch a single thing. I'll have, if there's an event or something I see, I just keep aware of things by reading a god awful number of other things than the freaking major news outlets, yeah. Right? But that's a way that there's worldviews being weaponized yeah. to propagate to people and twist everybody's opinion. Yeah. And COVID's a good example.
Well, I mean, for me, I prefer reading my news because I can read and easily discern what is opinion versus what is fact. But again, when we get into these situations where you're watching a media outlet report the news, you're not getting facts. You're getting op-eds is what you're getting. And I'm not watching the news for your opinion.
No.
I'm watching the news because I need to know the facts.
Yeah.
Straight facts, what's happening, when it's happening, where it's happening, and then leave me alone to be a grown adult man and make up my mind about the situation, right?
But see, here's another thing though about that. Just the way they structure a headline can elicit a certain
absolutely
feeling, and that's why that's another reason why feelings, quote unquote, are much more important necessarily. That's what they say, because they want to elicit a feeling by what they're saying, so that then you interpret that feeling as gospel truth.
Well, yeah.
Not that you look farther than getting some other information and see, but they want people to get impacted by how they put a headline out there, and then that's what they want you to like just run with.
Well, I mean, even
it's
looking
nonsense.
even looking at like one of the things, and I noticed this a lot there for a while. They would put a very leading headline on something, and then you would read the article, and it would have nothing really to do with what the headline was.
Right.
The headline was a 1% part of what the overall news feed was, right?
Yeah.
And in that, it's just misleading, right? It's just it's a dodge. And Worldview, is we should have a structured worldview regardless of who we are or what we believe or what our affiliation is. And I think a lot of that should be based on actual research. Well,
but the problem's been, though, is that science is now agenda driven.
Yeah.
Like you don't have real, it's like all about, well, these people gave us this much money for this conclusion, so we need to make sure our research comes up with this conclusion.
Yeah.
That's where it's so not the science I grew up with was like, no, it's absolutely about your hypothesis and your testing scenario and all this stuff to alleviate all these opinions, and you wanted to get down. It's all about the truth and the results and all this stuff. It's not anymore. It's dumb, because you can find 50 freaking studies that say all kinds of different things, because the result is pointed towards a certain.
It's biased towards the funding is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and here's another thing too. I think one of the things that troubles me about a lot of current worldviews are, number one, the student mentality has been taken out of it. Nobody really tries to go beyond the day. I think we want to sacrifice being the stalwart for a lifetime, someone who represents throughout their life and is remembered for holding their values and being a open person who's willing to learn, for being the hero today. And what I mean by that is, how many people have taken on a headline or a tagline or jumped on a bandwagon that they haven't done any research. They don't really, other than whatever the surface touch is, know exactly what's happening, right? But yet they dive in head first, become stalwart in an opinion that may actually not be based in fact, because they haven't done any research. And I'm not saying, and I'm not accusing any one particular person of being ignorant or being unable to defend their position, but I can tell you that a very large swath of people have taken a worldview based on a very quick strike in a subject that doesn't have any research backed by it, because they want to be the hero of today. Well, guess what? I don't want my legacy to be based on one day. I want my legacy to be based on a lifetime of Brian was, you can say what you wanted about me, but I was willing to do the research, look into what was happening, and a very interesting story about you, Reggie, and your faith. This was one of the reasons why I really kind of was magnetized to you, because I asked you, I said, how did you become a Christian? And you said, I did the research.
Yeah, it was totally.
You were like, I did the research. I looked at other religions. I looked at history. I looked at, not only the biblical truths, but I looked at, where in history can we identify these things happened? And that was a huge draw to you, because for the first time, and don't get me wrong, man, Christ has saved a lot of people through emotion and through heartache and through pain and through single events.
And miraculous.
But you stood up and went, dude, I'm going to do the research. I'm going to find the truth. And once I find the truth, I'm going to stick to the truth. That to me says it goes miles for your character, right? In the situation. As for someone who, and this is anyone, I'm not pointing in any subject, who comes to me and brings to me something and says, Brian, I believe this. And when I go, why? It's, well, because I feel like it's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole lot of people out there that can talk very convincingly. I mean, we can go through history. Jim Jones, Charles Manson.
Even some of the televangelists, dude.
Yeah. Dude,
are you kidding
Crespo
me?
Dollar. Let's talk about Crespo Dollar and how that man became what he is, right? Like I'm really looking at, I am going to listen to people who bring me substance. If someone comes to me and brings no substance, I'm not going to shout them down, but I am going to let them know, until you have substance, I don't really want to have the discussion, because it's going to become an argument from authority. And that is the worst possible place to have an argument from. And that to me is not a worldview, because a worldview is your past experiences, your current experiences. Your worldview is your research. You're changing as a person. We grow as people. That changes our worldview. When you take a single shot and you pull to something with a single shot and no research, to me, that's not even a worldview. I really don't actually know how to describe that. But I feel like when we, I don't know, when we're lazy in that manner, our results are lazy, our lives are lazy, and the things that come behind it are lazy. You should never be defamed for having a worldview based on proper criteria. And I think that's part of our current worldview issue is we have lived a lot of life in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. And that is instantly dismissed at times. And that really brings me disappointment more than anything else. Right. So, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you, because I think this is a great medium for the discussion. Right. If you could change one aspect of worldview and how people assimilate worldview, would there be something that you would change?
No, because it's not about that. Okay. The worldview is really not a method or even anything. It's really, worldview just means the summation of your experiences and your beliefs and how that's applied to how you perceive things and the events and whatever, right? So it's not about, because that you would have to say, if you're talking about changing something, then that would be changing something of their experience or their beliefs or whatever. But that's not really what it's about. Because everyone's perception is evolving all the time. You're experiencing new things. You're learning new things. All that stuff compounds into how you perceive reality. So what the one thing I would say is that you can't allow yourself to be pigeonholed into one specific thing and not have the courage to challenge that sometimes. Even in my faith, I'll still challenge it every once in a while and be like, because look, there's so many questions that come up. There are so many things that come up that you have to go look for and reaffirm. And that's kind of what Paul talks about in what I think it's Timothy. I can't remember now, but he says, always remind your brother of the gospel. always remind. I mean, like he's talking to just these. That's what he's telling his leaders of the church and everybody. Always remind your brothers and sisters of the gospel and what he did on the cross. Always. So we always have to remind ourselves of that. And that's part of it, because if we're thinking free-willed individuals, well, there's going to be a lot of things that we encounter we're going to have questions about, or something we just don't understand how to deal with or whatever. We have to look back and we have to remind ourselves what Jesus did on the cross and like what that did for us, right? It's the same thing with like if I was a secular person, I mean, I'd have to constantly be going, okay, what's the science behind this? What does history teach us about this? Or, philosophy, what did Kant say? Or, whatever, Bernard Russell, what did he say? Bertrand Russell, sorry. What he say about this? You'd have to do that all the time about certain things. But that's if you're rooted in a secular mindset. But, the thing about, I'll say this though about philosophy. It's kind of funny that most of your secular philosophers, like that are respected. I mean, it was like at the end of the day, there's like no point in life. There's no meaning. There's no purpose. Yeah. Everything dies. That's it.
The meaning of life is to die. So,
everything's gonna die of heat death eventually, and that's just hey, that's the way it is. So live it up while you can. Whether it's mine is not. We have a short, brief period of physical existence here on this plane of existence, and then from here we go on forever. And that is where our eventual home and place where we will have infinite things to accomplish for his kingdom. That's my meaning and purpose. It's all leading to that. It's not this life. It's all about the next.
Do you think that's the part of worldview that we've lost?
I think some of us in the westernized Christian community have lost a lot of what the worldview should be.
Do you think that's the case in the general population, even non-Christian, just that?
Yeah, because I mean, look at how we live in the U.S. right now. Like you can complain about all kinds of stuff about taxation and what the inflation and whatever, but at the end of the day, most of us don't struggle with feeding our families and having shelter and clothes and stuff like that. We have the basic necessities that absolutely necessary for life covered. I mean, that's pretty much, I volunteer for some homeless organization. So yes, I do that, but that's a very, very, very small minority in this part of the country anyway, that, have that problem. So, I mean, there's not a quote unquote need, but if you do mission work and you go somewhere like third world countries where they can't find clean water, they struggle to find food or clothe themselves or even have shelters and stuff, man, that there's some God need that happens in those places. God moves different in those places than he does here. Like, that's the thing. It's not like he isn't different, but we're a different people who have different needs. So I'm not saying that God changes. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying and maybe it's just you notice more when there's not so much extracurricular crap around your life than than when you're here and you have all the necessities built for you.
Well, and I feel like that's the distraction, right?
Yep.
Like that's the devil's game. I'm going to distract you. And let me be clear about this too. This is something that I've wanted to say for a long time, and I'm going to say, when I've had a lot of people go, oh, the devil, bifurcated tail, horns. Let's be clear. When I say the devil, I ain't talking about, the guy painted red with the pitchfork. I'm talking about the guy sitting across the table from you that you don't know very well, but he's making a whole lot of sense, even though somewhere within yourself what he's saying is wrong. Whether you call it the still small voice or God screaming in your head or whatever it is, that's who you're looking for, right? Like, I also think there's a lot of, I'll call it kookery that people apply to Christianity. Like we believe in, the devil and his, you've seen the cartoon stuff that people put out there, right? But the devil's not a beast. The devil's not, he's the guy that's feeding you the information that's taking you away from what you know in your heart is the truth. And he's doing it in such a way to make it sound fantastic. And in that, I think that is part of my worldview, in the sense of, that's why I feel like discourse has gone away in our current, environment, is because he doesn't want discourse. Because usually when you have open, calm exchanges of information, the truth will come to the surface for a thinking person, right? For a person who's not acting irrationally from the heart or from the feelings, but they're using the mind that God gave them to think things through. They're usually going to come out on the end they should come out on. So the more noise the devil makes, the more noise that is made to distract us and pull us in different directions, the more the discourse and the worldview breaks down, right? The more the worldview becomes being the hero for that day.
Yeah.
Right.
So the thing is, when you talk about the devil, right? I think the one thing that we have to remember is that Satan himself was a beautiful, like the most beautiful angel there was. Mm-hmm. And he tries to replicate what God has created. So where God has love, he has lust. Mm-hmm. So whatever Satan is not going to be some disgusting looking whatever. No, that's going to be an illumination of, probably pretty magnificent. I mean, yeah, that's the truth of it. And what he says, I mean, even when his interactions with with Jesus and stuff, I mean, look, he didn't say anything that was untrue. He tried to get Jesus to say things that were untrue by asking questions. Yeah. So that's the truth. He's the great deceiver, and he's beautiful. That's the truth of it. Yeah. So, in our current world, we have a lot of things that are beautiful. Yeah. That are pretty bad for you, and a lot of that's on purpose.
I would go further to say we have a lot of beautiful, deceptively beautiful things, right? Like, they're beautiful on the surface, but when we get to the core of them, they're rigged, Right.
Well, there's one thing that I really look. We have a culture that, even though they're trying to, with whether it's promoting a thing, we have a wage gap, or we do this, or we do that with women and men. Yet we're still prizing the sexualization of women. That's still held up by anybody as like, that's okay. I mean, look at advertising, look at the music and the videos and all this stuff. I mean, are you kidding me? They're not wearing any freaking clothes, and they're up there just gyrating around on stage, and yet that's held up and wins Grammys and stuff. What? No. Don't tell me you're empowering women and you're going to sexualize them like that. You're out of your mind. And it's their choice. They should be sexual creatures and all this. Give me a break.
Well, for me, it's about choice, and it's about defending choice. You know what I'm saying? Like, we make choices all the time, right ones, wrong ones. But when we make a choice, usually choices that are made in that way and that are defended that way are choices made for the sake of profitability, whether that be profitability in likes on Instagram or Twitter, or whether it be likes on Facebook, or whether it be money or fame, or, but what people don't realize is there's a cost that comes along with that. To say this about, my wife, in the sense of, there's a reason that I am attracted to my wife. And let me be clear, I am as attracted to my wife after many years of marriage as I was the day I met her. And the reason for that is because she has such a high level of self-respect, not only for me, respect for me, but self-respect for herself and the sanctity of our marriage, that she chooses not to showcase that for people that are not included in our marriage. And she doesn't realize probably to this day how much I appreciate that, because that tells me that she understands and knows that we are married, and there's that our marriage and those things stay strong because we choose to do things that are within our marriage.
Well,
right?
You honor each other.
Yeah, we honor each other. And then there's, and I think that's part of the thing, that we forget is, it is our job to honor our wives, right? And it's vice versa. And people see the worldview of marriage. People see like a Christian marriage as some form of slavery. Well, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. My wife, there is no one I respect on planet Earth outside of God and Christ himself more than I respect my wife, because she has put in so many years of hard work in our marriage, and so much of herself into our children, and has been such a wonderful influence, and is such a giving person and loving person. And we have our moments and our arguments and our disagreements, and just like any marriage. But at the end of the day, we choose to love and honor and respect each other and live within the bounds of our marriage and do it happily.
Yeah.
I think that part of the current worldview on marriage too is built on this
happiness scale.
Yeah. We have forgotten that it's okay to feel our feelings, right? It's okay to be disappointed and sad and a little depressed sometimes. We were given these emotions to help guide us through the moments in life with the proper reaction, right? It's okay to be dismayed and confused and things like that. Those are all part of our spectrum, right? Part of the things that God gave us to survive through this life. I can tell you that through some of my most difficult moments in life, I've had the most growth. And I look back on them and they're terrible, but I grew.
Look, man, here's the thing. We've forgotten duty. There is a duty that comes with being a husband, being a wife, being a parent. And that gets pushed to the side because we're not happy, or there's not this fulfillment that we somehow made up that we absolutely need, or something that's not going on. So we'll, instead of really working it out with our spouse, we'll just try to let's move on to a different one. And this is getting, the divorce rates in Christian churches is not, it's pretty high.
It's not impressive.
No.
So,
but yet I've encountered so many people though who've done it right. And they're not perfect. No one is, but man, they've been married for 50, 60 years and they're still, still a married couple. They're still living it out. That's awesome, man. And that's the example. It's not the other, people who've been married 7, 8 times and, going off about this or that. It's like, really, you stick to it and you work together. And cause if at the Christian, at the end of the day, the Christian way is that you're one flesh, and you can't sit there and get all separated with yourself. And then that doesn't do right at all. So, but that is a difference of how we see the reality of marriage. It's like, from a Christian point of view, divorce can happen, but there's only a couple cases where that's allowed.
I think
period. Really.
I mean, what? We got adultery.
You got adultery and you got abuse.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, right? Like I've met some people who have been divorced, and in hearing their story, they have very good reason. The husband or the wife was unfaithful. The husband or wife was abusive, and those are not okay things, right? But this thing of, well, I don't love him or her anymore. Let's be clear. Love is not an emotion. Love is a choice.
A lot of times
we in the best marriage, you don't wake up every morning liking the person you're laying next to.
You have to work at it, dude. That's the thing. It takes work.
But I think a better word for marriage would be respect, right? We don't hurt or abandon or dislodge from the people that we respect. And I have a high level of respect for my wife. So I would never choose a path that would tarnish the respect that I have for her. You know, and I think that's part of the marriage worldview is this, and if you notice, when they say you need to have happiness, they don't ever really define happiness.
No.
They really just say, well, you should, you know, whether it's money or whether it's a new partner or but they never really define happiness. Like if you were to ask the question, what is happiness? It's such a cloud of ridiculousness.
Let's take that one thing a little bit farther. Let's just help this out. From a Christian perspective, we see happiness as a fleeting thing and not to be sought after. Like, it's good. It's not like being happy is wrong, but that's not the goal.
Yeah.
Happiness is fleeting, period. That is really the key to how we function in the truth of in it. And we look at suffering different.
Yeah.
Suffering is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because what the Bible shows us is that in suffering, we encounter him and we grow. There's something that happens that is going to turn out for the better because we have faith, and it says specifically that God works for the good always. It's not that he will ever do anything for the bad. So everything that he does or allows to do is for the good. So we encounter those things differently because of that. That gives us a hope that you can't have otherwise. That no matter what comes across, we know he is there. We know he's working. We know as long as we stay the path and we walk those footsteps of Christ, that we will come out the other side one way or the other, but in the end, it's for the better. Yeah. And because once this whole universe dies of heat death, guess what we're going to be? We're in a much better place, man. Yeah. We're having a good old time doing what we're supposed to be doing forever. So, I mean, that's the thing. That's a real big difference, because meaning and purpose are drastically different from a Christian perspective than others.
Well, I mean, and let's break it down to even a more base level, you know, and I'm quoting this, and I cannot remember for the life of me who said this, but it stuck, the phrase itself stuck in my head, you know. So let's take worst case scenario. You live your entire life. You're kind, you're forgiving, you're loving, you're understanding. You fight for good and truth, and you die, and there's nothing. You lived a respectful, kind, truthful, loving existence the entire time you were alive, and that will be your legacy. How possibly, in any way, could you find living a morally centered, loving, growth existence where you committed yourself to your marriage and being a good husband and father, and you committed yourself to the church, and you committed yourself to helping people? Let's say we get to the end and we're all full of baloney and it's nothing there. Let's just say that. What have you lost?
See, but the thing is, what they'll say, and I'm talking from an atheistic, agnostic, secular, humanist kind of perspective, is that you did not acknowledge the truth that that you could have done other things without that restrictiveness of religion being there. Okay. That's what they'll say. And that's what they do say. And the at the end of the day, okay, I might not have been able to be a gay man for all my life. I didn't want to. And maybe I wasn't able to incur as much wealth. But again, money's fleeting, that you can always earn more. And it really doesn't, it seems like a bigger deal when you don't have any, I tell you that. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can always pick up a leaf blower and go to a rich neighborhood and blow some sidewalks off, and I guarantee you'll make some money. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, like, the arguments, they'll make some arguments against that, but to me, they're pretty easily countered. But that's what happens. And this, let me step back and talk about this for a minute, because you said how I came to faith was important. That worldview at the time was I've always been an intellectual person, thought I was the smartest guy in the room all the time. I still struggle with humility. I mean, I'll be flat honest. I have an ego the size of a house, and it's hard. It's a constant work to restrain the ego, and it just is. It's a fight I battle all the time. So, thinking I'm the smartest guy in the room, always like that. I've always been able to digest like books just rapidly, man. I can read very fast, and I won't memorize lines of stuff, but I'll remember all the points and like what it means and to the root of it. So when I thought, I was Taoist for a while, like a kind of, I guess you call pseudo Taoist, because I was like, I knew there were other forces in the universe other than just what we can see and feel. So I never was an atheist. I was always kind of a spiritual person. But the truth of it, I was disgusted by what the Christians I knew, how I saw them when I was a teenager. Hey, I didn't like it at all. And I hated the way the church was and just that kind of thing. And that does have a lot to do with ego and everything else too. But, so I didn't really like it that much. And then when I got to a point in my life, I moved back home after I got divorced the first time. And I thought, this is a time when I'm by myself before I find the misses that I need. I need to figure out where I'm at spiritually. And I thought, an easy one to knock off the list would be Christianity. Because, I mean, it should be pretty easy to disprove. If the Bible's false, if all this stuff, it should be really simple to just go through and knock it off. Because that was it. I was like, this will be simple. And that was really what I looked at it like. This will be easy. I'll find the answer, it'll be quick. When I did some looking around, it was like I was looking for. I wanted to look for if anybody had been like something different and became Christian, if they'd done any research or whatever. And that I came across Lee Strobel, who was editor for the Chicago Tribune, or I forgot what big paper. I forget the big paper now, but he was wicked atheist and was like, he set on a journey to disprove Christianity because his wife had become Christian and he wanted to disprove it. So the Case for Jesus, or the Case for Christ, was the first book I read. And it was his journey through his journalistic approach to dismantling the Christian religion. And he ended up because he did like he was supposed to as a journalist. He went to the experts in the fields, right? And so I read that book and I'm like, this dude's full of nonsense. There ain't no way. So what I did was I looked at his sources. All right. So I read that book and all the people he talked to, I read their books. Right. So I read all their books.
I'm not shocked.
No. And I mean, it was all, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually going through like a crash course in Christian apologetics. Didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's what I was freaking digging into all these like core reading materials for like apologetics. C.S. Lewis is one big one too, right? And so anyway, there's a bunch of these, and I was reading it, and then let's see, and then I was reading all this stuff, and I'm like, man, this ain't so easy. I'm not disproving anything. I'm just finding proof that this is all real. I mean, historically and how their Bible is put together, because I've always said there were contradictions and all this stuff. And then you read real scholarship texts that people study this stuff for their entire lives. And you're like, oh, so there's reasons, and there's like, and it was like, man. So then I'm like, okay, let's read some stuff from the secular, the atheist point of like how, so I read like, drawing a blank now, McCutcheon, right? Is that his name? And Dawkins, guys that are pretty heavy into that and very angry individuals, seems like. And then I was reading stuff, and I read God is Not Dead, or God is Dead, and I read all a bunch of stuff like that. And I was reading them and like, man, this doesn't sound. There's no substance here. This is just, it's not. And at the end of the day, I kept reading. I think I read the next Lee Strobel book that he wrote, said The Case for the Real Jesus, where he was confronting a certain group, and at the end of it, it was like that he was talking a lot about the proof that Jesus was a historical figure and everything else. And then I read his sources for all that. And at the end of the day, it was about right before Easter. It took me about 8 months, I think, of just reading nonstop of this stuff. And I finally told those guys at Encounter, I'm like, there's nothing I can research anymore. There's nothing. This is true. And I said, I can't be anything else but a Christian. This doesn't make any other sense. And there was no like lightning bolts. There was no like miraculous, rays of light anywhere or anything. It was just an intellectual approach to just trying to find the facts of what happens. And so there I was, I'm like, poof. And then I come into Christianity, right? And I was raised Christian. So, I mean, it really wasn't that I didn't know the Bible or anything. I kind of read the Bible a bunch of times. And so it was almost like I became a mature Christian way sooner because I'd already done all this other stuff. And then it was just about living life that way. And, and I think it all clicked for hard when I became a dad. And when I had my own kids, dude, Christianity itself became such a slap in the face, like, holy cow. Because as you know too, Brian, like if you look through the text, it's like he's the heavenly father. So like the father analogy is huge through what we believe. Being one wrecks you totally get your soul completely taken up into, I get it. And it's just holy cow. I understand now. So my worldview through that whole thing was so dramatically changed because I was willing to look at the facts and because I was willing to look at scholarship and listening to debates, watching debates, all kinds of them. And then why I went back to Liberty University studying apologetics was because that's what I kept doing. I'm just like that. I like to intellectually get into debates and lectures and everything else. And I was watching Dr. Lim on YouTube, and it was just like a ray of freaking bolt of lightning hit me in the head, said I should do this, I could do this. And then in 24 hours, I was enrolled and accepted in Liberty University as a theology and apologetics student. So that whole thing, my worldview changed over like a course of like a decade, from one of skepticism and even combative to not even just intellectually seeing it as the truth, but as just full blown now defending that faith in a bold and almost forceful manner sometimes, because it's something I just know. And that's just how it's been.
In my walk, it was similar in the sense of, it was after my youngest was born. I knew who God was. I had come up in a family that they talked about God, but they didn't really follow God, right? Like there was a lot of, without going into gory details, a lot of, misquoting of scripture and, doing a lot of things that were just ridiculous. And one of the things that really makes me angry about my faith is when someone takes a scripture and takes one sentence out of it and twists it. But, when Dylan came along and it was Caleb, the battle got real for me. Like, it really got real. Like, and, I tell this story sometimes, but it still shocks me because, and I tell people too, don't dismiss your kids. Yeah, they're not developed and they haven't been, but don't ever dismiss your kids. We were driving along the car and Caleb asked me out loud, he goes, Dad, why don't you go to church with us? And I was like, just being dismissive because I didn't really want to get into the conversation. I said, I don't like buildings with steeples. And he didn't say anything else. So the summer went by and then the winter came and Julie and the boys began to attend Encounter where you and I met. And my 5 or 6 year old son walked in the house one Sunday and sat on my lap and hugged me, put his arms around my neck. And he goes, it's all right, Dad. He goes, I found one that doesn't have a steeple. And
you didn't have nothing to say about that, did you?
It broke me down. It made me realize that, my son, my 5 or 6 year old son sees God.
Yeah.
What is wrong with me that I don't? Right?
That's awesome.
And
I'm not laughing at you. I'm like,
from that day forward, I was like, all right, I'll go. And, Mike, he was so great, and he was such a, I don't give him as much effort. I won't say your last name, Mike, but you know who you are. Mike was so key to bringing me to peace with my past and telling me it was okay stepping into the future, and what I did from that point on was just try to surround myself with good counsel. Right. And I wasn't necessarily looking for Christian men. I was looking for wiser men who had lived and were living in similar situations to me. And, of course we met and I was attracted to your situation where you were really building on your faith. Like you were in that building phase. Mm-hmm. And I was still playing with Lincoln Logs at that point. I was there, but y'all gave me Lincoln Logs. Y'all were like, can't give you the Legos yet. And then I began, but it sparked my curiosity, man. I started to learn and I started to see my life in a different view. And it took a long time. I mean, I struggled through a lot of things. And I'll always be grateful for that time because I feel like looking back, I learned a lot more from that time than I learned from anything else. But that is when I began to recognize how askew my worldview had become, like how broken it had become, but there was something missing. They call it the God-shaped hole, right? That was there, and my mission, so many good people I've met over the last 10 years that have just been pivotal in who I am and my faith growing. And, as any Christian does, at times I question, is this what we're supposed to be believing? But that's where faith comes in, right? So, but, and make no mistake, I'm not, blind to the flaws that are inherent in our faith, not by God, but by the men who call
Amen.
themselves,
Well, that's the thing, dude. And I keep pointing to that because what's key for any church or Christian man or woman is to acknowledge that we're all
broken.
We're all broken, man. Mm-hmm. And there's no difference in value from one to the other. And like, yes, when you're saved from we're using Christian verbiage here, like you accept that mantle of like, I'm going to follow Jesus now. He is the way, the truth, the life. You are adopted into his family. You have a special place there. But he's looking for that everybody. It's not just you he's seeking that out for. He's looking for everybody to do that. And you should never be afraid of where you are in your walk with Christ. Because there's someone out there you can connect with.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, right? I mean, the fear of that is from not a good place. Like, even though I'm not this PhD scholar researcher for whatever, doesn't mean I can't speak well to the gospel and communicate that to people or whatever. I'm not going to know everything. Nobody does. I mean, like, there's people, the realization here is that there's people that spend their entire lives on just certain books of the Bible. I mean, look, there's a lot in this. Like, you ain't going to know all that stuff, but you can know the truth and the reality of salvation and redemption and, like forgiveness. You can speak to that. Anybody who's saved can speak to that. And that's what's important.
Okay. Well, we've been going at it for a while, Reg. So
look, at the end of the day, everybody has a different worldview. And what we have to acknowledge in order to communicate across those worldviews, and I'll put it in a way that some of the apologetics professors have said, you got to step in their circle, be there, talk to them there, then work your way out. Don't just come in there and go, well, the Bible says this.
Yeah.
They're not going to look.
Doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work at all. Be a real freaking human.
Yeah.
Just be a human, man. I mean, there's a time and place to be forceful and abrupt and like bold, but there's also a time and a place to ask questions, to live life with other people who don't see the world the same way as you, and to really work to make both of you better. That's the key. It's not, look, there's a time for some things, and everybody will hopefully get to this point where there's a moment when you just made a difference. It could be a small thing. And we have to keep in mind that and this is for all the Christian people, the way the world sees events and things as huge and big, that's what's to be celebrated. That's not the same for God. God, if he knows every hair on your head, even the smallest little detail is important and matters. So it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a garbage man who's struggling to has a marriage that's on the rocks. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO and you're an intellectual superior and that you can't see any. I mean, look, there's little differences that matter. And everyone has a shot to find the truth and the reality that God has presented this universe. It's all there. And it's not some witch doctor nonsense and fanciful stuff. There's historical, factual things that illuminate the Bible and Jesus and his teachings that anybody can understand.
To piggyback that, I would add on, don't neglect to recognize the greatness in your life. I think we tend to downplay the greatness in our life because we feel some measure of guilt or some measure of, well, we should hide our happiness and our joy. There's plenty of pain. There's plenty of disappointment in the world.
Plenty of failure.
But recognizing our greatness, meaning, you have purpose, right? Is everyone's purpose achievable at the same moment? No. Is everyone's purpose the same? No. Your purpose may be to just be the head of your family and to be the stalwart for your family and be a good person. your greatness may be curing cancer. We don't know. But when we fail to recognize our potential for greatness in our current situation, how will you ever recognize a greatness larger than that? And so don't be so quick to want to be the hero for today. I've said it several times, because that's over the next day. If you're driven for a purpose, and your purpose is to be as kind and loving and acknowledging as you can be, and to go out and get to know people and love people, then man, you're already holding one hand with God, right? Because that's what God wants for us. He doesn't want me to judge people. He doesn't want me to be upset with people. He doesn't want me to be angry with people. He wants me to show them the same love that he showed me. And that's really the purpose of my worldview. My worldview is now love people where they're at. That's my worldview. Because if you love them where they're at, you can't be wrong. So, anything else, Reg? Any parting comments?
If you took all the letters that make up the Wall Street Journal, and you threw them up in the air, and they landed and created what is the Wall Street Journal, that's about the same probability that the universe would be created by a random event.
They always said it takes more faith to be an atheist than it does to be a Christian.
All I'm saying is that mathematically speaking,
yeah,
we are far beyond in powers of levels of impossibility that this universe was created on by randomness.
Yeah.
There is legitimately no reason to, if you really want to go that way, it falls against everything mathematical to say that. So I'm just saying, if you can just have a shred of openness to looking at things in a different way, you can find some truth and understand that it's not just your truth. That can be flawed. There is an absolute truth, and that's what we should seek. Reality, the truth of our existence, not somebody's agenda, not somebody, but the truth of our existence. And if you can do that, you'll be on the right track. But I could go on and on about the defense of the faith here, but let's just say that I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to making some other discussions and talking about some other things. There'll be more to come. And as soon as we get a schedule lined out that works, we'll let you know. There's a website being developed.
I'm working on Facebook and Instagram as we speak.
Yeah, we're doing some of that stuff. So, but for now, we'll put these up as content, and we'll work our way into doing some other things as far as that goes. So, I guess for now, man, that's it. God bless.
Well, agreed, guys. Thank you for listening, and we hope we were helpful to some people. Have a great time. Hooray!